Here are 10 Atlanta secrets I wish I knew sooner. The first one is how to avoid the Atlanta dreaded rush hour traffic. One of the things you can do to try to avoid that rush hour traffic is go in the opposite direction of the traffic. So like the majority of this rush hour traffic that we see here in Atlanta happens from the suburbs to the middle of Atlanta in the mornings, and then in the evenings it's from Atlanta back out to the suburbs. The reason for this is because the majority of people who live in the metro Atlanta area, actually like 90% of the metro Atlanta population lives in the suburbs, and many of those people work in the city of Atlanta. So this is why we have so much rush hour traffic on the interstates to and from Atlanta in the mornings and the evenings. So if you make the opposite drive, for example, if you live in like the city of Atlanta and work out in the suburbs, you would always be going the opposite direction of the rush hour traffic. Or a more likely scenario would be like if you lived maybe in Sandy Springs, or you lived in one of those suburbs that was closer to Atlanta, but then you worked farther away from Atlanta. So maybe you work in Canton or Marietta, but you live in Sandy Springs, you would be going the opposite direction. And this is one of the best ways to try to avoid that rush hour traffic. Also keep in mind that much of this rush hour starts around maybe 7:30, I would say is the earliest for the rush hour traffic. So if you beat that time and you maybe get to work around 6, or you get to work at 7, you'd be on the road from about 6:30. I know that's like stupid early, but many Atlanta locals will try to get to work super early to beat that rush hour traffic, and then get home again in the evenings or the afternoon. You beat that rush hour traffic, so you're getting home around 4 o'clock or 3:30. You're on the road around 3 p.m. This is another good way to beat that rush hour traffic. What's up, y'all? My name is Victor with Atlanta Suburban Living. We put out videos every week about what it's like to live in Atlanta and the suburbs of Atlanta. Number 2 on the list of the 10 Atlanta secrets I wish I knew sooner was all about 285. 285 is the interstate road that goes around the city of Atlanta. And it's used as like a bypass. Mainly, I think it was designed for like trucks, like 18-wheelers, or I guess anybody who's not trying to drive through the city of Atlanta would use 285 to get around Atlanta. But it has pretty much just become like a free-for-all racetrack on 285. You don't really see police officers very much on 285, and so the speed limit, I think, is like 65 miles an hour on 285, but nobody goes 65 miles an hour. In fact, if you went 65 miles per hour on Interstate 285, it would be dangerous. Like, you can go 80, 90 miles an hour on 285, and it's totally normal. So either you don't like going 90 miles an hour, in which case you should probably stay away from Interstate 285, or you prefer to go 90 miles an hour, in which case 285 is for you. Number 3 on the list is that the excellent food you can find here in Metro Atlanta isn't only in the city of Atlanta, you can also find it in the suburbs of Atlanta. So very often people think that like this awesome like soul food, country food that we have here in the city of Atlanta, people often equate the city to this excellent food. But the fact is that there are excellent options for restaurants even outside of the city of Atlanta. Cities like Marietta and Alpharetta, Duluth has an amazing Asian population, so you can find some great Asian food in Duluth. I would say maybe like Sandy Springs and a little bit of like South Marietta has a lot of Latinos there. You can find some amazing Mexican food there. Also some Caribbean food as well. My heritage, that Caribbean food is amazing. And so lots of great food options even outside of the city of Atlanta. Number 4 on the list of Atlanta secrets is that the home prices in Metro Atlanta are higher where the schools are better. I know this may sound obvious to many people, but seems to be that many people who decide to move to the Metro Atlanta kind of forget that those two things are correlated. In fact, if you're thinking about moving to Atlanta or you just have any questions about what it's like to live here, feel free to call, text, or email me anytime. I'm a local real estate agent here in the Metro Atlanta area, and I'd be happy to help even if you just have a question. Thank you so much to everybody who has reached out. But very often we kind of are trying to find like the best schools in Metro Atlanta for as low of a price as possible. And while that would be super ideal, the fact is that the home prices are higher where the school ratings are highest. And so if you're looking for the best schools in Metro Atlanta, the absolute 10 out of 10 perfect schools, you're going to be paying the highest prices. This is what is typical and what you should expect here in Metro Atlanta. And then where the schools are the lowest or the lowest ratings, that's where the homes obviously cost the least. And so in my opinion, the thing that you should know is that the best option, I think, is the sweet spot, not necessarily the middle. Don't be going for 5 out of 10 schools. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting you go for the public schools that are rated an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, in which case you'd be not paying the highest. And there are a ton of areas with 8 out of 10 schools. And so you're paying a more typical home price that's not going to break the bank. Number 5 on the list is about property taxes. The property taxes here in Metro Atlanta increase so quickly because home values are increasing quickly. So naturally, because the property taxes are based on the value of the home, the property taxes go up a lot. I know in certain parts of the US, there are maybe laws or rules in certain states where the property taxes can't increase by more than a certain percentage. Maybe it's 1% or 2% or something like that. We don't have any kind of law like that here in Georgia. And so it's typical for home prices to increase by like 20% or 30% from one year to the next year. It's like crazy fast how quickly these property taxes increase. And so certainly something to keep in mind. And then another big one is using the homestead exemption. I know you have this in other states as well, but don't forget that here in Metro Atlanta, you can file for your homestead exemption and get a discount on your property taxes. And then while we're at it, another thing about property taxes, seniors who live in certain parts of Metro Atlanta, like Cobb County, don't have to pay for the school portion of property taxes. This is huge because this is like half of the property taxes. To get a 50% discount on your property tax bill is a sweet deal. Number 6 on the list of the 10 Atlanta secrets is that nobody here can drive in the snow. If you're coming from the north where y'all like have regular snowfall and like the streets get covered in snow and stuff, you're going to be horrified by how terrible the drivers in Atlanta here are in the snow. We're just not used to the snow. And so every once in a while, like the 1 out of 3 years or 4 years that we actually do see snow on the roads here, it's like mind blowing to us. We don't even know what to do with ourselves. Everything shuts down. The schools, the stores. And I don't mean like if it snows like a lot on the road. I mean, if the weatherman even says the word snow, everything shuts down because they just don't want the liability. The schools, the stores, they don't want the liability of people driving on the road and getting into a kind of like accident. And so everything shuts down at the mention of snow here in Georgia because we just don't know how to drive in the snow. Number 7 on the list of Atlanta secrets is these Facebook groups. I'm not really a big fan of Facebook, but it actually is really helpful for like the neighborhood, maybe the Marietta Facebook group or your neighborhood Facebook group. There are all kinds of events and people post all kinds of helpful things on those Facebook groups about the city or your area or your neighborhood. So that is definitely something you should check out. Number 8 on the list is public transportation here in Metro Atlanta. We call it MARTA. Nobody really uses MARTA, especially if you live in the suburbs. Not no one. Of course, somebody's going to make a comment that, yeah, we use MARTA. Some people certainly use MARTA here in Metro Atlanta, but it's very few people actually use MARTA. And then number 9 on the list is the schools. They start very early here in Metro Atlanta, like the first week of August, maybe even like one of the first couple days of August is when the public school year starts. And so that really catches some new people by surprise. And then number 10 on the list is which suburbs are the best. The Atlanta secret that everybody wants to know is which one out of these 100 suburbs around Metro Atlanta is actually good. And so I made an entire video talking about the 10 best Atlanta suburbs. You can check it out right here. I'll see you in the next one.